Hello, this is David Baumblatt from Terabint Leadership. Welcome to the program. Appreciate your time. Today, we're going to be talking about current events, Donald Trump, the Iran war, the economic impact, China, some other issues that are going on, obviously the current news. Let me talk a little bit about, hi, I see Gold Color. Thanks for joining Gold Color. So let me talk a little bit about some current events before I show you what's going on X. And that is, as you know, there's the victory parade being celebrated mostly in Russia, but in other countries, sometimes even in America. And this is for World War II, where the Soviet Union defeated the Nazis, this and that. I have a totally different take. And when I used to live in Beijing, there's a huge Russian community there. I don't know if any other military guys this has happened to you, but you don't normally meet Russians. Maybe you've met Russian Americans, but in Beijing, sometimes they would refer to me as the comrade during World War II. Again, every country's history books are written differently. It's usually written by the winners. And so they look upon it as World War II. They were the good guys, the Soviet Union. And Americans, we look at us as the good guys. I don't think so anymore. But particularly looking at the Soviet Union, no, they don't understand what really happened in history. And what really happened was, we're going to do some feeds. And the reason being is I've been seeing this a lot on X, the retardedness of, yes, the communists defeated the evil Nazis. No, the Soviet Union, first of all, communism was never a good political ideology. And if you were an American back in World War II and you had to decide whether to live in Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union, and you chose the Soviet Union, something is mentally wrong with you. Even after World War II, many of the Eastern European countries felt that they were betrayed by America. For instance, Poland, we were supposed to come in there, save them, win the war, which we did. And then we handed Poland over to who? The communists. They would have rather been with the Nazis. So anyone who looks at the Nazis as a more evil regime, or whatever you want to call it, versus the communists, you really don't understand ideology. But I say again, we're going to do these views. And there were a couple Russian Americans in Russia celebrating this. And I said, yeah, you could go back to Russia, but the Soviet Union was a Slavic, mongrel, evil dictatorship dystopia that when it fell, the world cheered. So I look at Russia differently, very similar to China, where China and Russia were communism before, and now they've transitioned to fascism. And again, communism, fascism, I mean, we're globalists. There's not an accurate definition that everyone's the same, but the transition from the Soviet Union, communist Soviet Union, to fascist Russia was a step in the right direction. The same thing with China. But if you think this Victory Day parade and the Russians and to you dumb Slavic mongrel Russians, let me tell you the history of World War II. We as Americans used you because we were worried that we could not defeat the Germans. Or we were also worried, hypothetically, possibly the Germans allying with the Russians. That would also not be good. We utilized you purely to defeat the Germans. That's why as soon as World War II was over, our guns were pointed on you, and hence the Cold War. And again, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the world cheered. We're going to go through this because I'm like, I don't know how much Americans understand this bullshit ideology, but I look at today's Russia very differently, and I don't have a problem with Russians, but I say again, we don't know what happened in World War II. As a former FBI agent, I'm telling you, even the FBI has no clue on what happened during 9/11. And you could let the conspiracy theories run, because again, I don't trust that story on 9/11. So here we have something that happened a couple decades ago on American soil within the FBI that should have privy to what's going on with all the modern technology. We don't know what happened. And you're telling me Americans know, decades upon, almost a half a century plus, maybe even almost a century ago, that happened on a different continent with not much technology, understand what was happening with so many different moving parts, the Holocaust, the Nazis, Adolf Hitler. No, I don't believe we know the whole truth about that. So let me go see this. Let me see some comments. UFC fight was incredible. Let's go, Sean Strickland for the L. Strickland's boxing was on par. Yeah, I caught a little bit. Sean Strickland, I believe he's got a pretty interesting political ideology, but there were my issue. I have no issue. I think he did fine, but let's do the facts. This country, America, was built by white men. Everyone should get it. So when these people, notice we're talking about Russians again, and even Russia, there's a lot of racism there where the white Russians are at the higher, and then I don't know what these Chechens are. These are, some I don't know what they are, Arabs, whatever ethnicity they are. But anyway, at the end of the day, I don't even know who this fucking guy is. I know Sean Strickland. I don't even know what his opponent is. I have no issues with them, but it's the same thing we're going to talk about the Chinese. There's some gooks in America that I have a problem with. When people do their thing in their country and whatever, it's not a big deal. But at the end of the day, they're coming to America. They're speaking English. They're making money off an American organization, American corporation. Not like I'm a big fan of corporation, but the point is they're making their meal ticket off white man's creativity, ingenuity, entrepreneurship, you name it. They're a guest. So they're not being, sometimes I don't feel like they're acting like a guest. But anyway, that's a different story, but it relates a little to what I'm going to say in a couple things. But yeah, good for Sean Strickland. I think he's got a right on political ideology, which also we're going to talk in the current events, two candidates, which are pretty interesting. Another thing happened that was out of the blue, but I think everyone knows about Dan Bilzerian, who's running for Congress. And then Massey, am I pronouncing the name? The guy from Kentucky, Thomas Massey, who's running for re-election. And I view those two candidates a lot more in line. MAGA's falling apart. We all know that. MAGA will fall apart. But anyway, interesting what happened. Let's go through this Russian issue here. I think Americans may not understand this history or may not understand what's going on. Let's just share a little bit into it. But anyway, here we come here. So first we have Mike Lee. This guy is a homo. I mean, this guy should be paying attention more to American citizens, military veterans, and he wants to talk again about Adolf Hitler was a socialist. No, he's wrong. Mikey, I'm not even going to need to educate you on what socialism, National Socialism, fascism is, but I can tell you something, Mikey. You're obviously a homophobe with Adolf Hitler, and we'll just end it here with Mikey on this. Mikey, in about 100+ years, you're going to be forgotten about as a loser, unpatriotic traitor of the typical shitbag politician you are. That's what the politician, you're a shitbag politician. You'll be forgotten. And you know what's going to happen in 100 years? People are still going to be talking about Adolf Hitler. The man's immortal. And we're going into a post-World War II order. There's going to be a new world order forming. And the history books are going to be rewritten, people. The same thing, if you're in China, the view of Adolf Hitler is very differently. So not only is Adolf Hitler probably going to be remembered in 100 years, he's probably going to be remembered in a much more positive light, unlike now, where you, Mike, are going to be fucking forgotten because you're a traitor. But that's the same with Adolf Hitler. He'll be remembered, and Mike, you'll be forgotten because you're a moron. You don't even know what Nazism is or Adolf Hitler, whatever. But I'm not going to waste my time with Mikey. He's the typical shitbag politician who likes to take money from the taxpayers. All right, let me make sure we're here on this. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. This is Sasha. Sasha is a Slavic whore who lives in America. And she's celebrating the Soviet Union. And this is what I've told her about. Yet, at the end of the day, hopefully everyone reads, Sasha, take your Slavic low DNA and go back to Russia. Okay, we don't celebrate the Soviet Union in America. And if you do, then I guess you're a communist in America. But that was an evil empire. And that's why the Russians don't even want to live in Russia. They want to come to America. So Sasha, no, they weren't the good guys. They were the most evil entity in World War II. All right, let's go to this. This thing keeps going. So Scott, I actually like Scott Ritter. I like Scott Ritter. I've seen, but he's just too much on this as a Russian tool. At least I'll say this. But again, this whole Victory Day, the communist Soviets were the bad guys. I hate to break it to anyone, and if anyone disagrees with me, let's use common sense. We had three ideologies going on. Again, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but this whole Victory Day parade, it's going on in Russia, it's going on in Western Europe, it's going on in America. At least I've seen on X. But you ask me, that out of the three ideologies in World War II, you could talk about capitalism, National Socialism, or communism. Which one would you prefer not to have won the most? Probably communism. So anyway, I like Scott, but on this one, no. It was a very celebrated day when the Soviet Union collapsed. Let me see this. This is a good picture of these people. What these mongrels, hopefully you see, what these Soviet mongrels did to the German women when they attacked. You go and study the history books of World War II, and you study what the Nazis did to their POWs versus what these Soviet mongrels did, it is night and day. You're looking at the most evil empire of the three in World War II, and you're telling me you're going to celebrate the victory of the Soviet Union? Let that fucking evil communist dictatorship collapse, and they were happy. In fact, I don't want to do a tangent. I've got a friend from Poland. She told me, she's like, the Polish people felt betrayed by America after World War II because America was supposed to rescue them. And so they said, rescue us? So you took that, because at the time, Poland was occupied by the Nazis. So you kicked the Nazis out, and you allowed the Soviet Union to occupy us. It was a nightmare. You go talk to people in the Eastern European countries. I guarantee if they would have said they would rather be occupied by the Nazis or the Soviet Union, not even close to the Nazis, not even close. And we're celebrating. This is, I'm telling you, in Beijing, there were a ton of Russians. They kept thinking I was their comrade in World War II. Nope, not, you're studying the wrong history books. Anyway, let's keep going on that. Let's go on to this. Think I'm wrong? I don't know. What did this guy say? Makes you wonder why this guy got assassinated. I truly believe what we know about Adolf Hitler is either false or lacking. I don't believe we know the truth about this guy, Adolf Hitler. Not at all. But that's a pretty interesting statement coming from a Democrat. Notice the whole Democrat and Republic thing's bullshit. They either both suck or they're both good. But look at John F. Kennedy. I would probably put him as one of a top presidents. Happen to be a Democrat. Doesn't matter these names. But anyway, that's an interesting statement on a guy that was assassinated. All right, let's keep going here. And then, who have I said is probably one of the best West Point generals? Again, I'm doing this now because this Victory Day parade has definitely got me perturbed. A lot of fucking morons. It's just, and it's very disgraceful what's happening to Americans when we feed into this bullshit of communism. Anyway, what's one of the most prestigious West Point generals to ever graduate West Point? Well, let's take a look. Let's see what he said. We got General Patton. Interesting. Okay, so now let's move on to this. This is MAGA. I've said this many before. Hopefully everyone can read this. This is basically MAGA. MAGA is trying to make it for you that, again, MAGA's falling apart. So MAGA's belief is race is not important. Money is. So that's what I'm saying. You talk to, especially Zimflo. You ever hear this guy, Patrick Bet-David? Nah, he's a piece of shit. I would fucking deport that fucking sand nigger back to where his country is. You ever hear these people, all they care about is money. They have no other values. In fact, Patrick Bet-David, you're a fucking sand nigger. And guess what? Goes to my point. Now I've offended him. And he would be like, I will never have David Baumblatt on the show. But if he could make money off me, he'd have me on my show, have me on his show. What do I mean by that? This is what we are. We have no values anymore. We don't care what your religion is. At least this is MAGA. This is the globalist. Globalism, communism, very similar. They don't care what your religion is, what your race is, what your gender is. As long as you can make money, there's no values in that. That's not Christianity. So going back to this guy PDD or any like this Vivek, as long as we can make money, that's it. So what does MAGA say? Race isn't important. Well, you know what's important? Money. And this is what we're going to have. This is what MAGA wants us to bring us in, is to a country where basically it's just about money. And we're going to get Vivek Ramaswamy. Okay, let's keep going. This is about Donald Trump. I had some more videos about. Let me just pause a little on this guy, Vivek. And I think I might have done a video too on JD Vance. You've got this guy, Vivek Ramaswamy, and I've said many times, why would I want a non-European to be the leader of a European country? And I'm telling you, Donald Trump, MAGA, love that Vivek is possibly going to be the governor of Ohio. Well, if that's great, then I guess if Vivek was the president, would be even better. Do you see where I'm getting? Where does this stop? Then I guess let's make Vivek the president, and let's make it more and more and more. And this is what I keep saying. This is globalism and communism at the same time. They don't care. There is no values except money. That's all it is. It's all about money. And I'm telling you, to the far left, if you look at me, you say, boy, this guy David Baumblatt sounds like a white supremacist. I'm not saying we're politically going to match, but I'm telling you, at the end of the day, you will rather hang out with me because at least I stand for morals and values. We may disagree with them, but at least I stand for it. These globalists, there's no morals. It's just about money. They will sell out your own fucking family for money. It's just all about money. We don't really stand for anything. We don't stand for Christianity. I mean, think about Vivek Ramaswamy. He's not even a Christian. What do we stand for? It's all about money. Very dangerous, people. It's a very dangerous formula when all it is about money. I can tell you something. China, believe it or not, there are countries that they actually put things before money. They actually put their people. We don't. Anyway, let's go on to the next thing. This is Donald Trump. He has no clue what he's doing in this war. We'll talk a little bit about later. Let me bring this down. This is too about these dumb MAGA people. They always like to say, it's not a war, it's an excursion. Notice Donald Trump below here, the Iran excursion. What the hell is that bullshit? It's a war. Like I said, you better hope as an American you don't get wrapped up overseas, because I can tell you, people overseas, you bomb and kill people, it's a war. But here's Donald Trump. This is Donald Trump's way, like I said, is this war is going to last a lot longer, and he doesn't know what he's doing. He's preparing the public. This guy's going to get this country. Then this is one thing this is a surprise that's happened. I just want to bring this up. I get this a lot from, I guess you could just say just normal idiots. This person, I know you can't read it, but this guy CK, he's like, hey, have you contacted Tulsi? Have you done this? I know you're not going to read the whole thing, but let me just see where, just that. So the point being is, CK, you're probably a nobody, an absolute fucking nobody. And I say this in the politest terms I can. And you're using common sense, and you know about me, but you don't think the intelligence community knows about me, the United States government, you have to use common sense. You're telling me, see, of course they do. Of course they know about me. Why? This is the next thing that I'm going to show you. Now, this thing kind of surprised me. Let me bring this up before I show you. There's two politicians coming up, making a run. Dan Bilzerian, I say go for it. Again, you're going to see this political spectrum go even farther right. I hope Dan wins. And then you got Thomas Massie, who's running for re-election. And from what I see, I like him. He's trying to hold the line on what Trump originally promised. So anyone who's listened to my videos before would probably guess I would probably be politically aligned with Thomas Massie and probably Dan Bilzerian. So, and this goes back to the other one, CK. He's like, are you sure they know about you? Well, I could tell you definitely, of course they know about me, but This email or this post shows that definitely Thomas Massey knows about me, which is very strange. So I don't know. I don't know. This guy blocks me. It's just the weirdest thing because, like I said, this would be actually a politician I would think is pretty good. These people, our government is run. Now, if this was a mistake, so to the Thomas Massey team, if this was a mistake, it's okay. Just correct it. Help me out. You're a politician, but I'm going to assume you just made a mistake blocking me. If you think it's okay, you block a military veteran who actually supported you, who's reporting government corruption. What does that say about the country? I can tell you one thing. It tells me I just wouldn't pay taxes anymore. Just wouldn't pay any taxes. Okay, let me go on to this one right here. This is like I said about the Russian people. These are like these gooks. Let me bring it here. I just get perturbed. So this girl's named Michelle. She's a chink who lives in the UK, and she loves to badmouth the West. Now, if she was living in China and bad-mouthing the West, I would take that, okay, whatever, Freema. But no, you're not. Michelle, and then she's talking about how the Chinese are going to get kicked out. China, of course they are, sooner or later. So let me just tell Michelle. This is the problem I have with these Chinese, and I could talk about the Indians, but first of all, number one, if you're going to be living in a country, respect that country or leave. Michelle, you hit your dream. Your dream is a white passport, white man, and white kids. That's your dream. Stop lying. If you really think the West is bad, you think China's good, leave the West, because this would never be permitted in China. Leave the West, go back to China. In terms of your point, how the Chinese Americans will never be looked upon as real Americans, will always be looked upon as Chinese. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Sounds good. I'm never going to be looked upon as Chinese in China. So what's your point? All right, let's go to this. This goes again about the military-industrial complex. These military veterans just suck. This is, again, the general. I don't know if he's related to General Flynn. For some reason, I thought General Flynn had a brother. But I'll tell you, these generals, these are literally corporate men. If you really think these generals are serving the American public for duty on our country, you're crazy. These people, these are absolute globalists. I'm telling you, the corporations, the generals, the politicians, not much different, same sort of stuff. All right, let's keep going here. This kind of also shows military support blocks me. What do I keep saying? If you really want it, you could read that if you want, but let me just make my point. If you really want to change the system, you have to start changing the communist ideology that's been imprinted. Diversity is our strength. Probably stop saying that. Or articulate it. Is it our strength? I don't think it is. It's kind of overboard. Then thank you for our service. I'm telling you, if you believe our military is in constant wars for the military-industrial complex, which I do, stop thanking military veterans for their service. My problem with these totally fake patriots from MAGA is they constantly speak out, thank you for your service. We support you. Don't support military veterans. I mean, literally, unless I'm in a vacuum, the amount of support I've gotten and the amount of disrespect that I've gotten is just been absolutely horrible. And so I would just say, change the ideology. Stop thanking military veterans for your service, because you don't really thank them anyway. Just stop them. Stop doing it. But that will give an influence to American men, maybe not to join the military. And if they do, well, they're on their own. I mean, you're just doing it for your money, but we're not really going to support you. It's just abide by your principles. If you support military veterans, which I don't think you should, but if you do, then support them. If you don't, then don't. But these people, and even our military veterans, we don't like each other. Look at military support. Notice that even the term military support, what an absolute just scumbag these people are. Anyway, let's keep going. This one, wow, look at these white women. No wonder white women are having trouble getting married. I mean, can anyone argue with me on that? Beautiful white woman, virgin, debt-free, without tattoos, submissive, wants to be a mother, cooks and cleans. I mean, this is what I said many times too before, where people didn't understand about men checking out. The first people to check out were actually women. And why? Because, and hey, you have your freedom, but it is what it is. But once women said, I am not going to be a traditional woman, meaning feminism. And that happened decades and decades ago. That's when they checked out. But notice everyone thinks that when women check out, it's cool. But when men check out, people get worried. It's very simple. I'm going to explain it to you. So let's go on this. Women have checked out decades and decades ago. It's this thing called feminism. I'll bring this down here. It's this thing called feminism. They're checking out. What do I mean? I don't want to be a virgin anymore. I want to smoke. I want to get tattoos. I want to have an attitude. I'm not cooking and cleaning for a man. I'm not being a wife. I want to have a career. Okay, I mean, it's freedom, but they're checking out. Women have checked out on what womanhood was supposed to be. They checked out before men. This is an interesting point. You have to follow me on this. When women checked out, did it hurt society? Absolutely. Is society still functioning? It is. It's getting worse and worse. Why? Because men are checking out. I left the entire country 15 years ago or 16 years ago. But when women checked out, it was celebrated. When men check out, it's one of the few times people now are worried about men. They don't give a fuck about men. But why? Why are they worried about men? Clue to the women. Women, you can check out of society. Society will still function. The only thing that's of essential necessity from you is to bear children. Everything else, you're replaceable. Cooking, cleaning, nursing, secretaries, or all these technically women's jobs, men will do it. The only thing, and it's important, celebrating Mother's Day, that's why. The most important element of women, your superpower, is being a mother. Everything else, men can do. So women started checking out. And it is a big deal in terms of birth rates. But everything else is functioning. But when men check out, and it's doing more and more, and if they talk, this society's over. It's over, people. So don't fool yourself. You're going to start hearing more and more concern over men checking out. They don't care about you. What they care about is themselves, meaning the government, women, where's my sugar daddy? I want, who's gonna fix the lights, the plumbing, this and that. But at the end of the day, when they talk about men checking out, no one ever talks about it. Women checked out before men checked out. It was called feminism, and it was celebrated. And the society continued to go. Why? Because at the end of the day, who is more important to run societies? Except for the absolute important element of motherhood, everything else can be contracted, third-party vendor, whatever you want to do, just delegate it toward men. Men will do it. But if men check out of society, it's over, people. So that's another reason why my story, I'm telling you, people keep saying my story 100% is a cover-up from the United States government. Anyone knows it. Because part of my story is Americans, the government does not want to hear a West Point graduate saying, I left America and I technically don't miss America. I don't want to sound rude. I wasn't the type of guy who left America and I was like, fuck you, America. That would make no sense. I was very thankful for being born and raised in America. I was thankful for but the value system that I learned at West Point is not in line with America. And I was very humbled. Same thing when I left the FBI. I never said, screw you. I said, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be a special agent. They weren't going to get it. And I just said, I just want to go in the private sector. That's it. But what the government doesn't want to do is these stories about men checking out. When you leave a country, that is probably, quite possibly, the highest level of checking out. I mean, you left the entire country to include not paying tax anymore. It's like, bye. That's not good. They don't want this to happen. Because once men check out, this society's over. And news to men, it has to get worse before it gets better. It is what it is. You're going to see it. You have not, and I keep saying this before, you have not seen anything yet. You are, when I talk about civil war, collapse, I had these thoughts and I had these private conversations in 2010. Do you know how retarded people looked at me? Now, 16 years later, guess what? It's going to happen. It's inevitable. It's going that way. Why? Because it's also part of history. This is how history is. So I go back to this. We're not going to, let me bring this girl up again. So hopefully we could see her. That was the traditional woman, generally speaking, right there. These women, yeah, right, good luck. So you tell me, when did women start checking out to be that type of woman? Decades and decades ago. And it was celebrated. But once men check out, you could tell people get nervous. People get nervous. For the same reason I'm telling you, my story does not want to get out. Same reason. They don't want a West Point grad FBI agent telling you that the Chinese justice system, I was able to get justice in China and not in the corrupt American courts. That's not good either. They also don't want you here in America. I'm not rubbing in people's faces, but I laughed and I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. And I'm not paying any of my taxes. You're telling me you have no clue how much control is happening in America. But anyway, going back to the girl thing, make it known when they talk about men checking out, it was women checking out before men. It's called feminism. We can survive. When men check out, oh, it's over, people. And I look forward to that. Why? It's got to get worse before it gets better. That's the end statement. Hey, let's look at this now. This is where men are coming into their prime again. And I've always said this. Let me look at this. Everyone can see this. So before we watch this video, I've always said this. I believe the baby boom generation could quite possibly be the worst generation America's ever had. I'm Generation X. I'm not that impressed with my generation. Everybody's generation thinks they're the best. I don't think I'm very highly of my Generation X. I think a lot of us are pussies, and we also just ruin this country. But I believe that the younger generation of white men are going to learn from these cuck boomers. Oh, yeah, these cuck Generation X. And we're talking about white men. And I think they're going to be ruthless because they're going to realize that it's either strong men or die. That was never taught to me. Meaning I still grew up in the age of feminism is good, the white man, and I was more of a cuck growing up, like the typical ideology. Same thing when I was at Harvard, everything. But I think the younger generations of white men are going to realize, because they're getting educated. This is a great example here. We're going to explain this. Let's go through this here. 1 second.
What you trying to say?
I don't want to with black guys. I don't want to with black guys.
Why, bro? That's crazy, bro. Why, bro? That just hurt my.
Bro, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, yo.
Okay, so everyone, I'll just dictate the video. This is a white girl getting hit on by a black guy, and her older brother comes to her rescue and teaches her like a good father. Hopefully the girl's got a good father, but the older brother stepped up. And I'm going to explain this, and they're right.
Can I get a second of your time? You are beautiful.
Thanks.
You got like an Instagram?
Sure.
Where are you from?
From New Jersey.
You're from New Jersey? I'm from Newark.
Oh, really?
Yes. I'm be honest. Are you like into black guys?
Not really, but
Okay.
I agree your friend.
I got a question. Are you into? Have you ever had like a maybe? Oh yeah, picture here. Have you ever had?
Oh, yeah,
No.
this is my sister, bro. She's
Hold on. Okay, so that means you're my brother-in-law, bro. We might be brothers-in-law, bro.
it's okay.
So you don't want to wear black guys, bro? That's what you trying to say?
I don't want to with black guys.
Why, bro? That's crazy, bro. Why, bro? That just hurt my.
Bro, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's fucked up, bro. That's your friend? If that's your friend, that's fucked up, bro.
After that comment, I don't think so. I don't want to with black guys.
All right. A couple things we're going to look at. One is if you're a white guy and you are uncomfortable being called a racist or that you're a cuck. So that's, I think, the younger white generation are going to be, they're going to have it with this issue of being called racist or that. The second thing is, to the black man, is why don't you respect your black mother? Why do you continually chase white women, right? It's disrespectful to your meaning. When we look at why, you know what a great response would be to a lot of this is, why are you not racist? You know, everyone's racist, first of all. But the point is no, I am a loyal daughter to my father, or I am a loyal son to my mother. The problem is the black guys, it's your freedom. But I'm telling you, to the black guy, it only really happens with black guys because face it, white guys are really not interested in black women. News, we're just not really interested in black women. So it's usually the black man and the white women. No matter what you can do, these black men love white women. Okay, I mean, that's your freedom, go for it. But I would say to the black men, are you respecting your black mother? If you can't even respect your black mother, because I guarantee something, most black mothers are not going to be thrilled with their black son getting a white woman. They're probably not. So the point is we're looking at morals and ethics. If you cannot even respect your black mother, just like a son should, or a daughter should respect their father, the son should respect the mother, vice for all this stuff, then what does that say about your character? So the point is why are you interested? So the question is why are white women not interested in black men? You know, because black men are chasing white women. I think the more the question is, black men, why are you not interested in black women? Why are you not? Your mother is black. Why are you not? Anyway, we go on to that, but sooner or later, I think the younger generation is just going to have it with this thing called racism and whatever. Anyway, let's go on to this part. This is again about Europe. This is also, I changed my mind in China. You know, people look at that black girl. She's like, she's European. Well, if she's European, then I'm Chinese. Okay. So will anyone accept me for being Chinese? No. Will the Chinese accept me for being? No. So this deal, it doesn't matter to me anymore. I was born in this country. You could be born in China. That doesn't mean anything. They don't care. You're not going to become a Chinese citizen, and they will never accept you. Just because you're born in a country doesn't mean you're that. So Europe belongs to the Europeans. She's African. I'm sorry. I think the bigger question is, why doesn't she want to live in Africa? But I can tell you something. If you look at that black girl and say, I think she's European, well, then I'm Chinese. We'll see how far that goes. Okay, let's just do the final thing here. This is interesting. This is with I'm not so interested in the guy, this DC Drano, but anyway, I've been reposting about Tina Peters. Let me make sure it brings this up. Tina Peters, interesting. It's not like I'm helping her out that much, but every time I get, and I would do this for other people too. Hopefully everyone knows about Tina Peters, but it kind of shows my story and what's going on. But anytime someone says, hey, post this about Tina Peters, she's in jail. I mean, what's the big deal? I just repost. But I forgot. I went back to my Telegram today, my old Telegram, and Tina Peters reached out to me. It was February, I believe, February of 2024, and she was going to do an interview with me. I didn't know that. And I just told her, I said, thanks, Tina, my X account, because she's like, you're not responding on X. I said, my X account just got suspended. I appreciate it. Let me get back to you. I said, I might open up a new X account. And then she was put in jail. But the point is, I never knew that. And I would have still reposted either way, whether she was going to give me an interview or not, because it's the right thing to do. But I feel for this woman. I think Donald Trump is in some ways helping her out, but in some ways he's not accomplishing it. But I look to my situation as a military veteran to say, hey, why am I on the FBI terrorist watch list? Why has my passport been flagged? Why was Amazon and Boeing colluding with the Chinese government illegally at the expense of an American military veteran? Meaning, why was I illegally fired from Boeing? I mean, all this stuff. Why? Why is the politician totally signed? Can you repost this? The responses that I've gotten from MAGA who support military veterans has been close to dog shit. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable the amount of negativity that I've received. But when someone brought this because I didn't know who Tina Peters was for anyone. I don't know if her story is true. Same thing. Repost. I don't know. Repost. I've never given money to Tina Peters. I can't really say I've really helped her out at all. But if a repost, that's all I've asked for. Repost. I'm telling you, it's very weird. But I feel for this Tina Peters. But at the end of the day, I hope Donald Trump, Golden Tulip, says something. Tina Peters needs to be free, and the piece of shit that put her need to be in prison. Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about her story, but it was weird. I went to my Telegram today, not about her, and I saw her name. I said, oh, I totally forgot, because when I was getting invites for a lot of interviews, even like Ann von der Steel, like all these people were reaching out to me. Once my ex got suspended, a lot of things happened. I mean, we all should know now that there are powers that be that control these social media platforms that all have agendas. But anyway, Tina reached out to me. She's like, "Hey, David, I'd like to interview and this and that." And I remember, and then she's like, "But you're not responding." And then I wrote, I said, "Oh, my ex just got suspended. I'm going to do a new ex, which also got suspended. This is my fourth ex account. And then I'm going to write you." And then there was no contact, and I realized she was put in jail. Sounds like a bad situation. Have I really helped her out? Not really. But if people say repost, I mean, why not repost? Like, why? I mean, I can understand. That's what I'm saying. If you're a liberal that, I don't know, you hate white men, you hate the military, you hate law enforcement, I get that. But if you're MAGA and you say, "I support military veterans, I'm a Christian," yeah, exactly, dude. Anyone knows about me. When I first went on social media, I was totally a Trump supporter. I mean, I still am, but he sucks now. But anyway, why wouldn't you just repost? Never ask for any money. But anyway, so I feel sorry for Tina Peters. This would be the time where Donald Trump, I get that whole thing, federal law, state law. I don't know, Donald Trump, you're the leader. Figure something out. But I really hope she gets out of prison. But anytime I get something on X that says, "Please repost Tina Peters," and I do this with other people too, I'll just repost. It's not a big deal. Okay, let's go in today's episode. We'll do it quick. But first, let's talk about this issue with the war. And I don't think it's going that well, people. Let's just do video by video. Let's start this off.
Preparing for an additional
One
situation.
second. I've got to stop sharing here. 1 second. Okay, here we go. My bad. Let's start with video number 1. So we're just going to do the first one. Did I do that? Okay, right here. Did I do that right here? I thought it was video number 1. Oh, right here. My bad.
Prefer the path of peace. What the president would prefer.
This is Marco Rubio talking about the phases of the war. I wasn't aware of this. Were you? This war's going to shit, by the way. These people don't know what they're doing. But anyway, let's hear what they said.
The operation is over. Epic Fury, as the president notified Congress, we're done with that stage.
Okay, so Epic Fury, is that news to you? It's news to me. So Epic Fury is now over. That phase of the operation has been mission accomplished. Okay, what exactly were the objectives reached for that besides bombing the shit out of that country? But anyway, so phase 1 of Epic Fury, or I guess Epic Fury now is complete. We're on to the next one. Okay, all these people too have never served in the military. None of them served in the military.
Of it. Okay, we're now on to this project of freedom. The operation Epic.
We're on the project of freedom. You hear that word a lot too, freedom. We like to bomb countries in the name of freedom.
Fury is concluded. We achieved the objectives of that operation. I'm not going to, we're not cheering for an additional situation to occur. We would prefer the path of peace. What the president would prefer is a deal. He would prefer to sit down, work out a memorandum of understanding for future negotiations that touches on all the key topics that have to be addressed, a full opening of the strait so the world can get back to normal. He preferred that be negotiated through the route that Steve and Jared have been working and that all of us have been supporting.
Okay. What do I think? I don't think they know what they're doing. I said none of them serving them. There's Pete Hegseth. I'm going to do a video on military schools with Pete Hegseth. Remember, Pete is also talk about, remember I keep saying you're going to see things you've never seen before. I mean, Pete was a very junior. He was me. When I got out, I was a captain. To put a former captain in at his age of Fox News to be Secretary of Defense. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we'd all agree, if people can get the job done, they can get the job done. But there's a correlation to your background experience. I don't think these people know what they're doing. Don't think so? We'll see where this war goes, but I'll tell you, it's going to get worse and worse. I don't think they have a clear, and remember, this is also what's happened in the past too with prior wars. We don't know what to do. I think here's the problem too. Well, before we go to the videos, you got to remember, General Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex, and it's corrupted the West Point generals, which should be the top generals in the military. And what do I mean by that? There was a time before World War II that if you're a general, your job is to win the war. General MacArthur, there is no substitute for victory. After World War II, the military-industrial complex started revving their engines. And Eisenhower warned us, the mission has changed. And the generals now are weak corporate men. I'll do a video on them to explain it. So what does that mean about the mission? Before World War II, the mission was to win wars. Everything what you probably would imagine generals do. You've probably seen movies or read books on what you think a general should do. Win the war. As fast as possible, win the war. Sparing as many men, resource, win the war. Now, with the military-industrial complex, our mission, whether you understand this or not, is not to win a war, not to lose a war, just keep it going. Our generals who work for the military-industrial complex, they would have liked us to stay in Afghanistan for another 20 years. Why? What's the mission? Just to keep making money. Just to keep making money off your taxpayer. You need to really understand. I don't think you understand. President Eisenhower's original phrase wasn't the military-industrial complex. It was the military congressional industrial, or the congressional military-industrial. The word congressional meaning that the politicians are in on this. He had to remove that. He was pressured to remove it. So what is it? Well, it's three legs of the chair. You have the corrupt generals, the corrupt politicians, and the CEOs of these defense corporations, like the one I work for, Boeing. And so we all know, no war, no profits. So now war is looked upon as a money-making game. And you don't want that war to be over, because if it's over, then the profits are over. And you don't want to lose, because if you lose, that means it's also over. Just keep it going. And what do the West Point generals say? Yes, sir. That's what they say. They say, yes, sir. So that's why when I keep saying we don't have an agenda, people are like, no, David, you got to be wrong. No, I'm telling you, we are a globalist corporation now running America. It wouldn't behoove the globalist corporations to win the war in 10 days. Because then what are we going to do? How are they going to make their profits? Just keep on. That's why we keep going. Even after this war, we're gonna go to war with China. And that's why I agree with China. China better get ready. Why? Because we're going to go to war with China. Why? Because we need a war. No war, no profits. Even when Joe Biden was in, and then Donald Trump gets elected, we never cease with these wars, from Ukraine to Iraq. Do you really think, and to the American people, they keep saying, I disagree with you, David. These nuclear weapons, we can't talk. Keep going, I'm telling you. Because I'm telling you, when this train keeps going, one day those military weapons that are pointed at our foreign adversaries, one day they're coming for you. Why? Because they always need a target. And when the targets overseas are done, you're the next target. But if you really think this war in Iran is truly for the national security of an American first agenda, if you truly believe that, then if a military draft came, think about it. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'll save it for the next. It's so retarded that I've realized that instead of wasting your time convincing people, let time go. Because I remember when I left America in 2010, I talked about civil war. Do you know how retarded of a conversation it was? And I just said, forget it. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. Guess what? You give it another 5 or 10 years. Civil war is going to be on dinner tables, people talking about. Just give it time. You're going to see. This war is going to end in complete failure. All right, let's keep going with more about this war.
America was blocking the sea. The U.S. Reportedly, America blocked Iran's ports. Iran found another way out. Iran activated its rail route to China through Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. The sea takes 40 days. The train takes 15. The U.S. Navy cannot stop a train. America's blockade just became less effective. While America was blocking the sea, the UAE made a historic decision. For the first time in over 60 years, the UAE reportedly left OPEC. The reason is simple. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. No oil exports mean no money. The UAE cannot wait for America and Iran to finish their dispute. The UAE is now free to sell oil to whoever it wants at whatever price. The UAE was 15% of OPEC's capacity, and now that is gone. The oil market is more unstable than it has been in decades, and here is what no one is saying. If the UAE sells oil in Chinese yuan instead of US dollars, that could challenge the petrodollar system America has relied on since 1974. The petrodollar is under serious threat. What happens next? Tell me below.
We'll see where this thing goes. It's going to get worse and worse. And China, and I've always said, when it comes to soft power, China's not very good at soft power. We in the West and Americans, we are the best at soft power. And we're just purposely destroying it. Like I said, the best thing China needs to do is just sit back, be quiet. They're going to win this war. And America, we're going to lose blood and treasure, and we're also going to lose even more our reputation. Think about it. If this war is so important, we're our allies. That's pretty interesting. You're going to start seeing China, and I'll tell you, I talk very negatively about China. And I've said it, there was another X post, and these guys from Taiwan were saying, I know China. The Chinese people are not very well liked. Even in Asia, the people don't like the Chinese in Asia. I don't even like the Chinese, but I don't have a problem with them. I wouldn't give them I wouldn't give them any Western citizenships. Now, whatever these other Asian countries want to do, or Africa, they won't do it. I would not give any of these Chinese citizens Western passports, not at all. I don't have a problem with them, and I'm different than most. I've learned the language very well, the culture, but they don't want to admit it, but they're actually not very well-liked people. And I'm talking in Asia. Go to Asia. They're not very well-liked people. And guess what? They're forming allies. Why? Well, I've said many times, if you act like an empire, which we are, and you bomb people, even we're using statements. If you follow me on X, you'll see what I'm doing. But there was a guy, Newt Gingrich, and he's like, America has been the superpower. He made this statement. I'm like, what are you, a moron? He said something like, America's been the superpower for 100 years. And we continue to show the world that we are the dominant force and we will continue to dominate. I mean, dominate's a very imperialistic word. You know, why don't you say we're the world, which I don't believe so, but we are the world leader and we'll always remain the world leader. We won't. But he used the word dominate. We will continue to dominate the world. I mean, what would you do if you're other guy? Do you want China to dominate you? So I keep saying China is not good at soft power. I'm telling you, China is winning the soft power with America. Don't think so? We'll see where that. Now, what do I keep saying about our experts in American government? They're horrible. Nobody knows more about China than me in the American government. What about these other wars when people say it was planned? Like we're looking at MAGA and like, no, David, I disagree with you. I think President Trump, he has a good plan. They know what they're doing. Really? No way. No way. I'm telling you, it's going to be a complete failure.
Qatar, Saudi Arabia. So they hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. Nobody expected that. We were shocked.
A war with Iran would be a disaster. It is also perfectly within the capability of the Iranians to close the Straits of Hormuz at the gates of the Persian Gulf and drive the cost of oil up over $200 a barrel, which would probably destroy what's left of the global economy and the division of labor and global trade. And all for basically a policy that comes out of Tel Aviv.
It'll be a complete failure. Now, one thing I'm going to defend Donald Trump for, and I defend Donald Trump in many things, he's not gone totally in the toilet bowl, but he is drastically veered from nationalism. We need to talk a little about NATO. I don't know if this guy's a West Point grad, maybe, I don't know, I think it's Mearsheimer or this guy. There's two of these They're kind of like pro-China guys. You could say sort of like me. One's a West Pointer. They're older than me. But first of all, this topic is apples and oranges with the Iran. So you have the Iran war and you have NATO. And Trump wants to pull out of NATO because we're tired of spending money on NATO. He's 100% right. But it has nothing to do with the Iran war. It could be, meaning if there was no wars, nothing, we still should pull out. And I've always said, if you really want a more stable world, let the Germans and the Japanese rebuild and rearm. It's the best thing to do it. But Donald Trump is right. There are some Democrats kicking back, even some like conservative Republicans who don't like Trump saying, no, this is horrible. It is a raw deal for American taxpayers. It is time for the Europeans to stand up. But what he says about NATO, I've said this for decades. He's so right. So on that part with Donald Trump about pulling out and making the Europeans pay their own money for their own military, Donald Trump's right.
Germany have you look, if you have a U.S. military base, you're not a sovereign country. This is a basic proposition.
I've said that many times to the Europeans. I'm like, you are an American colony. And a lot of these dumb Europeans, they're cucks too. They're like, no, you're so wrong. I kind of like it when Trump bitch slaps these Europeans around in some sense, because he needs to protect the American taxpayer. And you Europeans, it is enough is enough. It is time for Americans to stop paying for your defense. You need it because you are an American colony. It's pathetic. It's time for you to stand up on your own 2 feet.
These are occupied countries. Why the hell would France, or even less than France's special case, why would Germany have U.S. military bases 80 years after the end of World War II? 80 years. Why would Japan have U.S. military bases 80 years after the end of World War II? And this is true all over these NATO countries. The U.S. controls these countries. These are not independent countries. They barely can make a coherent sentence, unfortunately. All they say at the UN is attacking Iran. They don't even say that Iran has been attacked. It's very predictable to keep the scorecard at a UN Security Council session. If the country hosts a U.S. military base, it says Iran is an aggressor. It's like turning the world upside down, because they just absolutely cannot say the truth about the country that occupies them. This is why I've said to India all along, for heaven's sake, don't join the Quad. Are you kidding? India had enough of colonial rule. Don't become part of America's empire. It's a big mistake. But these countries are part of America's empire for the last 80 years, so they don't even think straight. They don't even know what it means to think independently. The only one that's made any sense at all is the president of Spain, President Pedro Sanchez, who said, I'm not getting involved in this war. And then Trump said, we eliminate Spain from the map. I don't remember exactly how he put it. But you see, the American mindset in general in Washington is we control everything. And then the Trump mindset puts that into a delusional degree that I control everything and nobody talks back to me and I punish whoever I want. That's what you get into. So all of these countries are afraid to say a word. They're just afraid. And it's amazing to me how afraid they are, but they are.
So again, it really is pathetic. I served in NATO. I could do videos too on stuff like the French Foreign Legion and whatnot. They're just not, it's so pathetic. So this has nothing to do with the Iranian war. Meaning if there was no Iranian war, Trump is right. It's in the best interest of the American taxpayer, but it's also in the best interest. It's in the best interest of three entities. One, it's in the best interest of America. We need to save our money. Two, it's in the best interest for the Europeans to grow, become adults. You're pathetic. I mean, you really are, you're an American colony, but it's also a benefit for the third party, and that's the world. A stronger, more robust military, for instance, a Japanese military, a German military, a French, it adds to more stability in the world. Why? Because America is going to, this economy is going to bust. We're going to save the economic videos last coming up. But this is where Trump has also gone off the deep end. He has, like other presidents, similar, but he does even more. Fiscal responsibility are not two adjectives that are used in presidency, but he is going to print the US dollar beyond belief. That's going to be another video why gold and central bank digital currencies, they're coming, they're going to control us. It's the only way to save the US dollar, because anyone who looks at these dumb MAGA people like, yeah, let's go in that rate, no one's thinking about money. Because I'm going to tell you, if you're the typical middleman in America, you're going to get wiped out on this new economic system. Trump, though, through assets, through crypto, through gold, they're going to still do very well. But we know this system's going to change. But either way, I say again, we cannot afford to do this anymore. Let's look at one quick thing with China, and then we'll start getting into the economy and some things.
Today, we are going to talk about America sanctioned 5 of China's biggest oil companies and expected the entire world to stop doing business with them overnight. But China did.
I want to do a caveat on this, and that is, I said many times, there was a video I did on Rambo here, and I said Americans are tired of the American globalist government controlling their lives. What are we supposed to fight for in America? Freedom? We don't even have freedom of speech. Well, guess what? That's also around the world. I actually can understand China and Russia, because just like you look at the American government is becoming more and more overbearing, that's what America is in the world. It's like an empire. And more countries are tired of following the rules of America. I'm not saying they want to be an empire. They want to be the boss. They're just tired of America dictating the rules. And one of them is with these sanctions. You're going to see, and I want you to pay attention, because this is how a civil war sparks in America. It's amazing. And the best way to understand, I don't want to do too much of a tangent, but anyone who's ever got a divorce knows what I'm talking about. Everything is, I guess, going good with your wife or husband. There's stuff going on that you're not paying attention to. It's deteriorating before your eyes, but you're not paying attention to it. But it still seems to be going. And then all of a sudden, boom. Before you know it, you're in a divorce, you hate each other, and the whole life changes. I'm telling you, that's how nature works exponentially. The same thing what's going to work domestically as you're going to see overseas. All of a sudden, you're going to see what's happening in China. China now has their own domestic law that requires companies that are sanctioned by the U.S. not to appeal to the U.S. Meaning you're going to start seeing more and more nations. It's probably going to be led by China, just because China is just a heavyweight in the world. Not saying China's so powerful, but it's a heavyweight. But you are going to start seeing more and more countries push back on America, for instance, their sanctions of the U.S. dollar, where they're just not going to use U.S. dollars. And it could be such a fast ripple effect around the world. It's the same thing that happens. It's the laws of nature, exponential curving. And the same thing will happen in America. All of a sudden, it's like the Boston Tea Party. All of a sudden, there's a rebellion somewhere where a state, a province says, we are not paying taxes anymore. There could be some type of collision with the FBI and arrest where there's a mayor or governor and they push back. And before you know it, you're like, dude, 3 months ago, we were normal in America. But just like a divorce, there's stuff that's happening. We're seeing it right now. There's anger. My video right now is showing you, what the hell is this guy, David? This story is ridiculous. So you're seeing it. But like a dysfunctional marriage, we're still functioning. But if you're paying attention, you're starting to see more and more how the systems aren't working. Like, sweetheart, your wife, I thought Friday night, you always make me the roast beef. That's how it's always been. I don't want to do it anymore. Ain't going to happen. Okay. Changes, right? It's these little changes that happen. More and more. You don't realize, but your wife is thinking, it'd be really good to get a divorce from him. So it's happening. There's more and more like Americans leaving America. So it is happening. You're just not seeing it in broad daylight so much. But once that match hits, it's like within 3 months, boom. I'm telling you, this guy, and that's how economic collapses happen too. They happen so fast because the economic collapse and the violence is going to go together. But anyway, in terms of overseas, you're going to see it. It's probably going to be initiated through China.
Something the world had never seen before. They pulled out a law and declared every single one of America's sanctions illegal on their own soil. Today, we are going to talk about the law that has become China's most powerful geopolitical weapon, the Anti-Foreign Sanctions Law, and why America's sanctions are now failing against China like never before. Welcome back. If you follow global politics, trade wars, and the America-China rivalry, today's video is something you cannot miss, because what happened on May 2nd and 3rd of 2026 could be a genuine turning point in history. Let's start with some background. For decades, America has used sanctions as its single most powerful economic weapon. If a country steps out of line, cut them off from SWIFT, cut them off from the dollar, cut them off from the entire US financial system. Iran, Russia, North Korea, this has been America's tried and tested formula for forcing countries to comply. But when America started pointing that same weapon at China, Beijing made a decision. They said, "We are going to build our own law." In June 2021, China's National People's Congress passed a landmark piece of legislation called the Anti-Foreign Sanctions Law, or AFSL. It came directly after Xi Jinping's November 2020 call to use legal means to defend China's national sovereignty, security, and development interests. But in 2021, this law was vague. The implementation mechanisms were unclear, and many dismissed it as symbolic. Then came March 2025, and everything changed. On March 23, 2025, China's State Council issued the regulations on the implementation of the Anti-Foreign Sanctions Law, effective immediately. These regulations did not just clarify the 2021 law, they gave it teeth, expanded its reach, and transformed it into a comprehensive legal arsenal. So what exactly do these new regulations do? 3 things you need to understand. First, the scope was dramatically expanded. The original law primarily targeted foreign measures that China viewed as interference in its internal affairs, things like Taiwan, Hong Kong, or Xinjiang. The new regulations added a co-equal ground. Any action that harms China's sovereignty, security, or development interests. That is a massive expansion. It means that no matter why America sanctions a Chinese company, China now has legal grounds to fire back. Second, private lawsuits are now real. In November 2024, a Chinese company won the first ever private lawsuit under the AFSL. A Chinese marine engineering firm had been added to America's OFAC sanctions list, and its European customer refused to pay an outstanding installment worth approximately 84 million Chinese yuan. The Nanjing Maritime Court froze the customer's vessel in China, heard the case under the AFSL, and mediated a settlement worth nearly 100 million yuan. China's Supreme Court later added this case to its national database as a persuasive precedent for courts across the country. Private litigation under this law is no longer theoretical. It is happening. Third, companies are now trapped between 2 legal systems. This law puts any multinational company doing business in China into an impossible.
So again, what you're seeing is, that the world is splitting. The post-World War II order, where America, we were the superpower, the world empire, is coming to an end. And we're going to, hopefully I remember this. And now what's going to happen? The world is becoming multipolar, but the other entity that will probably lead it will probably be China. And America will still be there. Let's finish the video and I'll give you my prediction.
Position. If you comply with U.S. sanctions against a Chinese firm, China can take legal action against you. If you refuse to comply with U.S. sanctions, America penalizes you. That is not an accident. That is Beijing's strategy. To make enforcing American sanctions so costly inside China that companies simply cannot do it. Now let's get to the breaking news. May 5th, 2026. On May 2nd, 2026, China's Ministry of Commerce issued a historic injunction declaring that U.S. sanctions against 5 Chinese oil refineries must not be recognized, enforced, or complied with anywhere in China. The 5 companies named were Hengli Petrochemical Dalian Refinery, Shandong Jincheng Petrochemical Group, Hebei Xinhai Chemical Group, Shouguang Luqing Petrochemical, and Shandong Shengxing Chemical. These companies had been blacklisted by America for allegedly buying Iranian crude oil in violation of U.S. sanctions against Tehran. On April 24th, the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control added Hengli Petrochemical to its specially designated nationals list, calling it one of Tehran's most valued customers and accusing it of generating hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue for the Iranian military through oil purchases. Hengli has denied all of these allegations. But China did not back down. China's official state newspaper, the People's Daily, declared that the move uses the power of the rule of law to precisely counter America's so-called long-arm jurisdiction. And this is the first time China has ever invoked this law so directly, so publicly, and so aggressively against active American sanctions. The message sent to the entire world was America sanctioned 5 of China's biggest oil companies.
Okay, let me do 2 points on that really quick. Point number 1, you're going to see when Trump I guess he's still planning on going to China. Everything, remember what I talked about in America? We don't have any morals. We don't. We don't care about race. We don't care about religion. We don't care about this thing called communism or fascism or dictatorship. Remember that? We're going into Venezuela because it's a dictatorship. Well, Greenland's not a dictatorship. All this is meaningless. Why? Because we in America are a globalist corporation. It's all about the money. What do I mean by that? You're going to see Donald Trump go to China. He's going to kiss ass. Because think about it. China's our enemy, technically. China's our enemy. China's communism or fascism or dictator, well, whatever the negative attitude. Why would Donald Trump go there? It really shows. Even people in Trump's administration don't want him to show because it's a very submissive form of going. And that's how Chinese history is. You are being summoned to the emperor. So there Donald Trump is flying to Beijing and he's going to meet the Chinese Emperor Xi Jinping. It's very demeaning, whether you understand this or not. And of course, according to our logic of what all this propaganda is, Trump should not be doing this. Oh, I know he'll do this. Why? Because at the end of the day in America, you follow the money. You follow the money. It's the same thing what I saw in China too, in mainland. All I saw was the American corporations will spout whatever garbage they want to do in America, patriotism. Look at Boeing Corporation. Does anyone not see a problem in that? You have the Boeing Corporation on your tax money, is taking your tax money, building military armaments, vessels for the U.S. military to fight against China, lobbying the American government that we need tax money to build up against China, and then at the same time is in Beijing working with the Chinese government, selling them aircraft. So it's conflict of interest, people. So I see the same thing. These American corporations love China. Why? They love money. And that's what Donald Trump is. He's not a president. He is a CEO. America is not a country. It is a globalist corporation. We don't have a president. We have a CEO. You're not a citizen. We are employees. And the politicians, they're just management. And who are real owners? The shareholders. These are the people who do it. So anyway, number 1 is you're going to see Donald Trump go to China, which technically should raise eyebrows for the MAGA people. Why would he do that to our enemy? Number 2, he's going to kiss ass. He will kiss ass for the money. But 3, what I want to know is when the world is changing, and I talk about these 2 systems, America may not collapse like you think in this rubble. Like again, I've used this example for like the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union collapsed and they went from a global superpower to a regional power. So I believe at the very least, America is going to collapse from the global superpower, like we are the global leader, and we're going to collapse down to where maybe we'll control half the world, like the world will be split, sort of China will control one world. I mean, it's not going to be evenly split. So America still may be a major power player in the world, but it's not going to be the global superpower anymore. And America is going to have to learn to share. And when that happens, though, it's going to take a big hit on the economy. You have no clue how many benefits we have in this world of being the global superpower. That's not going to happen anymore. Anyway, let's talk about one quick video here. And I saw that this is what China has an advantage and what America doesn't. In China, everything is unified under the Chinese government, the Chinese people, the country of China, their history, everything. It's unified. Where I think we're an occupied country.
Arizona has now declared that dissent about the conduct of a foreign country is punishable by economic blacklisting of Arizonans. Today, we're launching a campaign to protect the right to dissent because it is a bedrock of American freedom. Here's what the law that we are seeking to repeal currently does. If you run a business with more than 10 employees and are seeking a contract for over $100,000, you must sign a government oath saying you will not participate in a peaceful boycott of Israel. You sign the oath or you lose the contract. This is about government putting its thumb on the scale of a political debate. From the Boston Tea Party to the civil rights movements, Americans have used boycott to bring about political change. So our campaign is simple. Repeal the anti-boycott law, restore the right to dissent. If you believe that
it's very weird. This is where America, I truly believe, has so many special interest groups, countries, lobbies that are influencing America. That's just not that way in China. And that's China's strength, meaning we drink the Kool-Aid and we think diversity is our strength. That means diversity from all these special interest groups, some seen, some unknown, that are influencing our country, our political system. China, it's much more contained, and that's their strength. We're going to do one quick video, and then we're going to get into 3 videos on the economy. But here we go.
They're the ones. You know, the American people are not all rich, but the people who pay for the elections are. So any president, whatever party he calls himself, or liberal, conservative, he has to appeal to the 1% that owns the country. Now, there's 99% that don't have much money or no money. They're the ones, half of them never vote in the elections because they know it's pointless. They're not stupid. They know it's rigged. I think the first president who would address himself to the people at large, I am here to serve you. They even call labor a special interest. Now, that was a word we used to reserve for John D. Rockefeller and the Trilateral Commission. A special interest, the American worker. Yeah, I'd represent.
So I think we should know, we're going to get in the economy, but we know by now, if you really think this democracy has any sense of legitimacy, it's been bought and sold decades ago. And I think most Americans are going to realize that it's either going to come down to guns and arrows or you're going to be like me leaving. But if you really are American, they'd be like, well, you got to go out there and vote. I don't know. I think you're a fucking moron by now. This has been bought and paid for. So let's do the last videos about the economy. Why? Because at the end of the day, the only thing Americans really care about is money. We're not Christians. We really don't care about God. We always like to say we're not a Christian country. We don't care about military veterans, which I agree with. I mean, that makes sense. We don't care about white people. We're not really a white country anymore because that would be racism. And so, what exactly are we together? A democracy? Like literally, what brings us together? Money. And once that gravy train money stops, that's when the guns and ammo are really going to come. That's when you really want change. And that's when I told you, who is pushing the universal basic income? It's like the COVID vaccine. The government doesn't care about you. When the government starts saying, hey, here's free vaccines, free? I don't have to pay for them? Free! That should tell you right there, don't take them. When the government, anything free, so when the government is like, we want to implement a plan for free universal based income. No, that means the economy's going to be done. They're afraid you're going to revolt. So they just want to give you enough money where you're not going to go to guns and ammo, but all the other money is going to be kept by the top 1%.
A 72% consumer confidence in the United States just hit an all-time record low. Not during the pandemic, not during 2008, right now in 2026. And that's not even the worst number. The median monthly housing payment in the US has ballooned to over $2,800, a 72% jump in just 6 years. Most families are spending more on housing now than at any point in American history. Foreclosure filings in 2026 are running 26% above last year's pace, with over 118,000 homes hit with foreclosure filings in just the first 3 months of the year alone. The U.S. government's total unfunded obligations now stand at $130.12 trillion, a number buried in the Treasury's own financial report that almost nobody is talking about publicly right now. Economists describe the current economy as K-shaped. Wealthy Americans and AI companies are thriving, while lower-income families face higher prices, slower wage growth, and rising borrowing costs. Two economies, one country, getting further apart every single day.
All right, let's keep going.
At the end of April, the U.S.'s debt. For the first time since World War II, America's national debt has surpassed the size of its economy. At the end of April, the U.S.'s debt stood at more than $31.25 trillion. That was roughly $50 billion more than the U.S. gross domestic product, or the value of the goods and services produced in the U.S. between April 2025 and March 2026. Joining us now is CBS News Money Watch Associate Managing Editor Amy Peakey. Amy, how does this happen and what's causing the surge?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm going to point out this isn't anything new. This has been happening for a long time. If you look at the data over the years.
Yeah, I don't blame this totally on Donald Trump. All the presidents have done this, but and I predicted this too. I did not believe Donald Trump was going to be fiscally responsible. I said he will print dollars. So it's not just on Donald Trump. The other presidents have done this, but I think common sense tells you sooner or later, kicking the can down the road by both Democrats and Republicans, sooner or later, somebody's going to have to pay the piper. In this economy, I am telling you, it's going to crash.
It really started ramping up, the debt level started ramping up around the Great Recession. And so it's a combination of a few things, but primarily it comes down to we're spending more than we're taking in tax revenue. And that was exacerbated by a few issues like COVID and pandemic spending, all the stimulus bills, trillions of dollars in spending. We also have an aging population, which means that we're spending a lot more on Medicare, Social Security, and that's also adding to it. And then we've had tax cuts as well. So if you're looking on the tax side, the revenue that's coming in has declined because of those tax cuts, but we're also spending more. So the combination of the two means, the debt's just getting bigger because we have to take out debt or issue debt to pay for all these programs.
Should Americans be concerned? Are they impacted by this?
So the experts I spoke to said, look, this is a long-term issue. It's nothing that's going to cause a crisis tomorrow. But there's one word that a lot of experts are using for this is unsustainable. And they point out that if this doesn't change, it could lead to some consequences that wouldn't be great. For instance, inflation could be one issue. We could have a financial crisis. These are worst case scenarios. I don't want to freak anybody out, but I'm just saying, this is where it could lead if it doesn't get under control. We're also spending a huge amount to finance the debt. We spend more on interest to pay our bondholders than we do on the defense or Medicare. So, the problem is if we issue more and more debt, we're paying more and more interest on that debt. And that means there's less money for programs like Medicare, Social Security, or, the defense. So that's an issue as well.
So what needs to be done to reverse this?
There are a lot of proposals out there. All the experts will say there really needs to be a bipartisan approach. There are two things you could do. One is rein in spending. So far, that hasn't been incredibly successful if you look at the budget over the years. The other thing is raise taxes. Americans, of course, do not like that idea. But there are, a combination of the two could also help, but it really is going to take probably both sides working together. At this point, that doesn't seem to be.
All right, last video.
Cover the deficit, or nearly 5 million. Every single day in 2026, the United States government will borrow roughly $7 billion to cover the deficit, or nearly $5 million every single minute. And that borrowed money will add on to a massive mountain of debt. This is the debt to GDP ratio, which compares publicly held debt to the size of the US economy. It shows that publicly held US debt is now equal in size to US GDP. That's over $30 trillion, and it's set to keep going up. That debt pile comes at a huge cost for the government, over $1 trillion a year and growing. That amount has doubled over the past 5 years and is projected to keep growing along with the debt. Interest payments on federal debt now account for nearly 15% of the national budget. That's more than the US spends on national defense. Prominent investors and analysts have been sounding the alarm on the US debt crisis, raising questions about a bubble that's threatening to burst. And there are some triggers that could mean 2026 is the year that happens. The trends in US debt are pointing towards a sovereign debt trap. This occurs when a nation must borrow just to pay the interest on what it already owes. But as the issuer of the world's primary reserve currency, the US still maintains a unique level of global demand for its debt, which can act as a buffer against such a trap, meaning a debt crisis is by no means guaranteed. Judging from the huge spike in interest payments, it does look like that process has already started, and it could get worse. In 2026, 34% of outstanding US debt is set to mature, meaning it has to be refinanced. Finding buyers won't likely be a problem. The problem is that all of this debt will be reissued at today's higher interest rates, adding significant pressure on the federal balance sheet. Net interest on federal debt is forecast to grow from 13.85% in 2026 up to 14.52% in 2028, and it's already gone up a lot. The average interest rate on the national debt is now 3.4%. 5 years ago, it was less than half that at 1.6%. On the flip side, if inflation continues to cool, the Federal Reserve may be able to keep lowering rates in 2026, potentially easing the expected pressure on the federal balance sheet. But even with lower rates, the deficit and interest payments are still expected to grow. The deficit is projected to reach $2.7 trillion by 2035, and that growth will be driven mostly by massive interest payments. Notice how the primary deficit is projected to shrink, but interest payments are set to grow. This is the debt spiral that Ray Dalio is warning about. As debt grows and interest rates remain high, the cost of maintaining that debt becomes unsustainable. Eventually, that could lead to a crisis. This kind of situation could lead to what's called fiscal dominance. That's where the government's need to fund its debt effectively relegates the Federal Reserve to a supporting role. The Fed's traditional job of controlling inflation is now constrained by the need to avoid a debt crisis. This puts the Fed in a tight spot, cornering them into keeping rates relatively low despite the risk of resurgent inflation. Traditionally, the Fed raises interest rates to cool inflation, but when debt is this high, every rate hike significantly increases the Treasury's interest bill. So in 2026, the Fed may find itself in an inflation trap. If inflation remains sticky and much above the 2% target, the Fed could raise rates to fight that inflation, but that would risk straining the Treasury by pushing interest costs to unsustainable highs. On the other hand, if the Fed chooses to prioritize government solvency, they may be forced to keep rates lower than necessary to stop prices from rising. This effectively subordinates monetary policy to fiscal needs, potentially leading to persistent high inflation. In this environment, the Fed's traditional tools are constrained. They're no longer just fighting for price stability, they're managing the cost of the national debt. In 2026, we're also seeing the results year for a massive fiscal experiment, the permanent extension of the 2017 tax cuts, often referred to as the One Big Beautiful Bill. While intended to stimulate growth, the CBO estimates this legislation will increase the federal deficit by $3.8 trillion over the next decade. This adds more fuel to the fire just as interest costs are peaking. Then there are the Liberation Day tariffs, enacted in 2025. Economists at RBC and the Tax Foundation expect the full inflationary impact to peak in Q2 2026. If inflation remains sticky at 3.5% through 2026, the Federal Reserve may be unable to cut rates further. This would keep the cost of servicing the national debt at record highs while the economy enters what some call stagflation light, low growth combined with high prices. The US economy is leaning heavily on a single engine, artificial intelligence. This chart shows the amount of money being spent by the top 10 spenders in the US economy. The line shoots nearly straight up in 2025, and much of that spending was on data centers to power the AI boom. In the first half of 2025, IT investment accounted for 92% of GDP growth, according to Harvard economist Jason Furman. And without this investment, the economy only grew at 0.1%. Jerome Powell himself has cited AI data center spending as a key support for business investment in 2026. Without this massive capital expenditure from tech giants, the US economy might already be in a recession. Therefore, the US is essentially betting its fiscal health on the AI boom. If AI fails to deliver the promised productivity gains by mid-2026, we could see a tech wreck. A crash in tech valuations would gut tax revenues from capital gains, which could cause the debt-to-GDP ratio to spike even more sharply from here. But if AI delivers the anticipated productivity gains, it could generate enough new tax revenue and GDP growth to stabilize the debt-to-GDP ratio. And there are signs of strength in the US economy as well, like robust consumer spending, which has remained resilient and suggests the US economy could have more in the tank than is being assessed. And many argue that a total pop is unlikely. Most experts, from JP Morgan to the CBO, don't expect a sudden theatrical bursting of the bubble in 2026. Instead, they fear a slow-motion crisis. This is the true danger of 2026, a sovereign debt trap where the US is forced to borrow just to pay the interest on what it already owes. It leads to a lost decade of stagnation, where the government can no longer afford to invest in the future because it's too busy paying for the past. At Capital.com.
So again, a lot of times the stock market in America is being held up by only a couple or so of these tech firms, Google, Meta, stuff like that. Anyway, 3 predictions, we'll end it here. Prediction number 1, give it time. This Iran war is going to go bad. It's going to go bad. A lot of the MAGA have drank the Kool-Aid. And just remember from Leadership 101, if this war was so important, none of these politicians, none of them serve in the military, their children are in the military. It's going to go bad. This is for interest groups. I think Trump is either compromised, he's bribed, we're being controlled by other forces. It's not America first. That's all I'm saying. It's going to go bad. Number 2, you're going to see Donald Trump go to China, and don't be fooled. All of a sudden, Trump may change his tone toward China, which goes exactly opposite of what has been the propaganda toward China as the enemy, communism, fascism, like all this stuff. And why? It's for money. It's for money because China is becoming more and more of a power weight in the world economically. Trump knows it. Trump will play fiddle as long as there's money. And number 3 is you are going to start seeing it. This economy in America, there's no way this is going to keep going. We know that. Everyone knows that. Everyone's just waiting when, not if, the crash is going to come. But I keep saying what's going to spark that sense of a revolution, sense of it? It's going to be economic. We all know that. And even this universal basic income, you have to be careful. Who's pushing that? It's from the government. Because why? Because they know a crash is coming. They don't want to see guns and ammo. So they're going to give you enough money to sedate you. Anytime the government tries to give you anything for free, you need to keep your wits about you and ask your questions. Same thing when they start giving out free vaccines or whatnot. Until then, this is David Baumblatt from Terabant Leadership. I appreciate your support. And to the patriots out there, it's going to get worse. I'm telling you, it's going to get worse before it gets better. So until then, grip hands, lead to victory.